Girl sees millionaire fighting a venomous snake. Then she does this. Comment what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10 and tell me what city you're watching from. I really want to know if you liked my story and get to know you better. So subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The morning mist hovered over the hills outside Asheville, North Carolina, as William Will Thompson began his routine walk along the trails surrounding his rural property. At 42, the veterinary products entrepreneur had developed the habit of treading the same paths every morning, a desperate attempt to find some purpose in the empty days that had dragged on since Jessica left with their 2 children 3 years ago. The crisp October air carried the scent of blooming dogwood blossoms along the path, but Will barely noticed the beauty around him, lost in dark thoughts about his declining business and a loneliness that seemed to grow with each passing day. His horses grazed peacefully in the field adjacent to the trail, and he paused for a moment to watch them, feeling a familiar pang of melancholy. Those magnificent animals were all that remained of his youthful dreams, when he believed he could build something lasting and meaningful. Now, at 42, he saw himself as a broken man, both emotionally and financially, struggling to keep afloat, a business that was withering along with his soul. It was then that the desperate scream cut through the morning air like a sharp blade. "Watch out! The snake!" The voice was high-pitched, childish, and filled with pure panic. Will turned quickly toward the sound and saw a scene that made his blood run cold. A sizable rattlesnake had coiled itself around the legs of Thunder, his favorite horse, a purebred black Arabian worth more than his house. The animal thrashed in desperation, neighing loudly as it tried to shake off the serpent that was attacking it fiercely. Without a second thought, Will leaped over the wooden fence and ran toward the horse, grabbing a thick branch from the ground. His heart pounded erratically as he tried to drive the snake away without hurting Thunder, but the serpent seemed determined to maintain its attack. It was then he realized that more horses were in danger. Star and Storm were also being attacked by other snakes that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. "Over here! More snakes are coming!" Again, the childish voice echoed, this time closer. Will glanced around and saw a small figure emerging from behind a century-old tree at the edge of his property. It was a girl of about 4, far too thin, with dirty, patched clothes, disheveled hair, and bare feet caked in mud. Her large, dark eyes shone with a surprising intelligence as she pointed to a specific spot in the pasture. There's a nest of them under that rock." The girl ran with impressive agility to the area she had indicated and began to make strange noises with her mouth, a kind of low, rhythmic hissing that Will had never heard before. To his surprise, the snakes began to move away from the horses, as if being called by that peculiar sound. In a few minutes, all the serpents had returned under the rock the child had pointed out, leaving the horses injured but alive. "How did you do that?" Will asked, breathless, still clutching the branch tightly. The girl shyly lowered her eyes, whispering something he couldn't understand. As he got closer, he could see the marks of deprivation on her small face, hollow cheeks, chapped lips, an unhealthy pallor that contrasted with the vivacity of her eyes. There was also something more disturbing, small scars on her hands and arms, as if she had suffered frequent falls or something worse. "Can you speak up?" "I couldn't hear you," Will said, crouching down to her level. "They listened to me," she murmured, her voice so low he had to lean in closer to comprehend. "The animals always listen to me. My grandma said I had the gift, but nobody believes it. Is your name Lily?" She nodded slightly, nervously fiddling with the hem of her torn t-shirt. "Lily Evans, I was running away from the shelter. They're going to take me back, but I don't want to go. They don't let me talk to the animals there." Will felt something stir in his chest, an emotion he had kept buried for a long time. There was something in that child's vulnerability, in the way she had risked her own safety to save his horses, that touched a part of his soul. he thought was definitively lost. The animals' injuries needed urgent care, but he couldn't just ignore the girl who had saved them. "Lily, are you hungry?" She quickly looked up, a flash of hope crossing her thin face before being swiftly replaced by suspicion. "A little," she admitted, her voice still a whisper. "How about I take care of the horses first, and then we can talk? You can help me. It seems you understand them better than I do." To his surprise, Lily smiled for the first time, an expression so pure and radiant it made Will's heart ache. "Can I stay near them? I won't get in the way, I promise." As Will examined the horses' wounds, he noticed how naturally Lily interacted with the animals. She approached without fear, whispered things he couldn't comprehend, and the horses calmed instantly under her touch. There was something genuinely extraordinary about that connection, something that went far beyond luck or coincidence. "Lily," he said finally, "I need to get the horses to a vet to check these wounds. Would you like to come with me? We can talk better at the farm." The girl's expression immediately shut down. "Are you going to turn me over to the shelter?" "I won't do anything without talking to you first," Will promised, surprising himself with his own sincerity. "But I can't leave you out here alone, especially with these snakes around." Lily looked at the horses, then at Will, as if weighing whether she could trust him. Finally, she gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Star is in more pain," she said, pointing to the bay mare. Her bite was deeper. How could she know that just by looking? Will examined more closely and confirmed that, indeed, Star's wound was the most severe of the three. There was definitely something special about this girl, something he didn't understand, but that deeply intrigued him. As he led the horses back to the property with Lily walking silently by his side, Will had no idea that this chance encounter would completely change the course of his life. The girl who had appeared like a guardian angel for his horses carried secrets that would shake the foundations of everything he thought he knew about family, responsibility, and the human capacity for both pain and healing. What he also didn't know was that at that very moment, several other people in the Asheville area were making decisions that would intertwine with Lily's destiny in ways none of them could predict. Will's house stood modest but welcoming in the center of the property, a two-story building with a wide porch that offered a privileged view of the fields where the horses grazed. Lily stayed close to the animals the entire way to the property, whispering words of comfort that seemed to calm them more effectively than any medication. Will watched, fascinated, as the girl naturally interacted with creatures that weighed 10 times more than she did, showing no fear or hesitation. "They trust you," he commented as he opened the main gate to the farm. "Animals can sense when someone won't hurt them," Lily replied, her voice still an almost inaudible whisper. "People are harder to figure out." The response carried a melancholic wisdom that made Will wonder what a 4-year-old child could have experienced to develop such mistrust of human beings. As he settled the horses in the makeshift stable he had built near the house, he noticed how Lily examined each wound carefully, gently touching the injured areas, as if she could transmit relief through her small hands. "I need to call a vet, I know," Will said, observing the bite marks. "Dr. Audrey Clark is the best in the region. She'll know how to treat these injuries properly." "The lady with the red hair who works at the clinic near the town square?" Lily asked, surprising him with her specific knowledge. "You know her. I saw her a few times when I ran away from the shelter. She always carries treats in her pocket for the stray dogs." Lily paused, nervously fiddling with a tangled lock of hair. "She seems nice." While he made the call, Will watched Lily cautiously explore the area around the stable. The girl moved like a wounded animal, always alert to sounds and movements, ready to flee at the first sign of danger. There was a deep sadness in her eyes that contrasted drastically with the courage she had shown saving the horses. "Audrey will be here in an hour," he announced after hanging up the phone. "How about we go inside and you take a warm bath while I fix us something to eat?" The panic that crossed Lily's face was instant and visceral. She backed away several steps, her eyes wide with terror. "I don't want to go in the house," she murmured, her voice trembling. "Can I stay out here with the horses?" "Lily, it's okay. You don't have to do anything you don't want to," Will said softly, realizing he had touched on some deep trauma. "We can stay right here. I'll get some blankets and food, okay?" The tension in the girl's shoulders lessened slightly, but she still kept a safe distance from the house door. "You won't force me?" "Never." Will went into the house alone and returned with clean blankets, a pitcher of fresh water, and simple ham and cheese sandwiches. Lily accepted the water with evident gratitude, drinking as if she hadn't had access to clean liquid in days. When he offered the sandwich, she hesitated for a long moment before accepting, eating small bites as if she feared the food might be taken away at any moment. "How long have you been on the run from the shelter?" Will asked, sitting a respectful distance away on the dirt floor. 3 days, she replied, wiping crumbs from her mouth with the back of her dirty hand. "But I've run away before. They always find me and take me back. Why don't you like it there?" Lily's eyes filled with tears that she tried to hide, turning her face to watch the horses. "They say I'm weird there. That talking to animals is for crazy people. Mrs. Morgan always yells at me when she catches me making the noises the animals like. Morgan? She works at the shelter. She's taken care of me since I got there." Lily's voice dropped even lower. "She said my parents didn't want me anymore because I was too strange, so they left me there." Will's heart ached. There was something deeply wrong with this story, something that went far beyond the obvious situation of an abandoned child. The way Lily spoke about Mrs. Morgan carried a fear he recognized, the same kind of terror he saw in the eyes of mistreated animals. "Lily, can I ask you something? Do you remember your parents? What were they like?" The girl closed her eyes, concentrating intensely. "Mommy had long hair and smelled like flowers. Daddy used to take me to see the horses at the neighbor's farm. They sang to me before I went to sleep. Her tears began to flow freely, but Mrs. Morgan said I made up those memories because I didn't want to accept that they abandoned me. And do you believe her?" "I don't know what to believe anymore," Lily whispered. "Sometimes I have nightmares where they're screaming my name, like they're looking for me. But Mrs. Morgan said they're just bad dreams." The sound of an approaching car interrupted the conversation. Dr. Audrey Clark parked her white pickup truck near the stable and got out carrying a large veterinary bag. At 38, she was a decisive and competent woman with curly red hair tied in a practical ponytail and green eyes that conveyed both firmness and compassion. "Will, what's this about snakes attacking horses?" she asked, walking toward them. "Audrey, this is Lily. She saved my horses," Will said, noticing how the vet looked with surprise at the dirty and clearly neglected girl. "Hi, sweetie," Audrey said softly, crouching down to Lily's level. "I hear you have a special way with animals." Lily glanced quickly at Will as if asking for permission, before replying in her characteristic whisper, "They talk to me. Not with words, but I understand what they feel." Audrey raised her eyebrows, intrigued. "What kind of things do they tell you? When they're in pain, when they're scared, when they like someone?" Lily pointed to Thunder. "He's worried because the bite is burning, and Star is sad because she thinks she did something wrong." Audrey examined the horses carefully, administering anti-venom and cleaning the wounds with professional efficiency. Throughout the process, she observed how Lily interacted with the animals, noticing details that deeply intrigued her. The girl seemed to anticipate the horses' movements, knew exactly where to touch to calm them, and demonstrated an instinctive knowledge of animal behavior that she rarely saw even in experienced adults. "Will, can I talk to you privately?" Audrey asked after finishing the treatment. They moved a few yards away, keeping Lily in sight. "This child has a genuine gift," the vet said in a low voice. "I've never seen anything like it, but I'm worried about other things too." "What do you mean?" She's clearly malnourished, possibly neglected. Those wounds on her hands and arms, they don't look like casual accidents. Audrey paused, choosing her words carefully. Will, you said she ran from a shelter? Yes, she mentioned a woman named Mrs. Morgan who works there. Audrey's face hardened. Eleanor Morgan. Tall woman, graying hair, works at the county shelter. I don't know her last name, but it could be her. If it's who I think it is, we have a serious problem. Audrey looked at Lily, who was whispering something to Star. Eleanor Morgan has a terrible reputation among professionals who work with children. There have been several complaints about inappropriate methods, but nothing concrete has ever been proven. What kind of methods? Excessive sedation of children considered problematic, prolonged isolation, even suspected cases of emotional abuse. Audrey sighed heavily. The problem is, she always manages to justify her actions as necessary to control difficult behaviors. Will felt a cold fury rise in his chest. Are you saying Lily might have been mistreated in the place that was supposed to protect her? I'm saying we need to investigate this very carefully, and while that's happening, this girl cannot go back there. Audrey looked directly into Will's eyes. Are you prepared to take on that responsibility? The question hung in the air between them like a challenge and an opportunity. Will looked at Lily, who had fallen asleep leaning against Thunder, finally relaxed enough to let her guard down. There was something in the innocence of that scene that awakened in him a determination he hadn't felt in years, the urgent need to protect something pure and precious in a world that seemed determined to destroy it. Yes, he replied without hesitation, I'm prepared. What neither of them knew was that this decision would trigger a series of events that would reveal disturbing truths about Lily's past and put them all in direct conflict with forces that preferred to keep certain secrets buried forever. The decision to temporarily shelter Lily brought with it a series of challenges that Will hadn't anticipated. The girl flatly refused to sleep inside the house, preferring to spend her nights in the stable wrapped in blankets, always close to the horses that seemed to be her only source of genuine security. For the first few days, she barely spoke, communicating mainly through gestures and whispers directed at the animals. She has episodes of mutism when she gets nervous, Audrey explained during one of her daily visits to check on the horses' progress. It's a common response in children who have suffered trauma. Her brain has developed protective mechanisms that include silence as a way to avoid more pain. Will watched Lily interact with Thunder, noticing how she seemed to perfectly understand the animal's needs just by touching its muzzle. But she talks to the horses normally. How is that possible? Animals represent safety to her. They don't judge, they don't hurt intentionally, and they respond to kindness in a predictable way. Audrey paused, watching the girl make soft sounds that instantly soothed Star. Will, we need to talk about something important. They moved to the porch of the house, where Audrey opened a file she'd brought. I managed to get some information on Lily's history at the shelter. What I found is disturbing. Tell me everything. First, she hasn't been there long, only 8 months. Before that, she lived with a woman named Eleanor Morgan, who claimed to be her aunt. Audrey consulted her notes. But here's the problem. I couldn't find any documentation to prove this relationship. What are you implying? I'm implying that Lily may have been irregularly placed with this Eleanor, and when the situation became untenable, she was transferred to the shelter with a fabricated story. Audrey showed a blurry photo of a document. Look here. The shelter intake records mention she arrived in a state of extreme agitation, with episodes of anomalous behavior that included conversations with imaginary animals. But the animals aren't imaginary, Will protested. Exactly. Which makes me question if someone deliberately distorted reality to justify extreme control measures. Audrey turned the page. Lily was heavily medicated with sedatives during her first few months at the shelter, supposedly to control her agitation. The fury that grew in Will's chest was so intense he had to lean on the porch railing. They drugged a 4-year-old child. Worse, the sedatives they used can cause memory loss and communication difficulties if administered improperly. Audrey closed the file. Will, I think Lily was deliberately silenced by someone who wanted her to forget something important. At that moment, an unfamiliar car drove up the dirt road leading to the property. It was a black sedan with out-of-state plates, driven by a middle-aged man in a dark suit. Will felt a knot in his stomach when he saw Lily immediately hide behind Thunder, clearly terrified. The man got out of the car and approached with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good afternoon. My name is Carter Vance. I'm an attorney. I'm looking for a girl named Lily Evans." "For what purpose?" Will asked, positioning himself to block Carter's view of the stable. "I represent the child's legal adoptive parents. They have just returned from a trip abroad and discovered she disappeared from the shelter where she was being temporarily housed." Carter opened a sleek briefcase. "I have all the necessary documentation here to prove legal custody." Audrey stepped forward, her professional instinct alerting her to something suspicious. "May I see those documents?" "Of course, Doctor." "Dr. Audrey Clark, veterinarian. I'm treating the animals here on the property." Carter handed over the papers, but maintained a vigilant expression. "As you can see, my clients, Mr. and Mrs. Benedict and Amelia Vance, legally assumed custody of Lily 6 months ago. They have considerable resources and are anxious to have the girl back." As Audrey examined the documents, Will noticed that Lily had come out from behind Thunder and was slowly approaching, her eyes fixed on the lawyer with an expression that mixed recognition and absolute terror. "I know him," she whispered, her voice so low only Will could hear. "He came to Mrs. Morgan's house. They talked about me, about horses and money." Will's heart raced. "What kind of conversation, Lily?" "He said that people with horse farms pay a lot of money for children who know how to talk to animals." Tears began to stream down the girl's face. Mrs. Morgan laughed and said I was worth more than she thought. The revelation hit Will like a lightning bolt. This wasn't a normal custody situation. It was something much more sinister. He looked at Audrey, who had turned pale while reading the documents. "These papers are forged," she murmured discreetly. "The dates don't line up, and there are inconsistencies in the legal language." "Mr. Vance," Will said, keeping his voice firm, "I'd like to see some official identification, and I'll need to verify this information before allowing any contact with the child." The lawyer's smile wavered slightly. "Mr. Thompson, I don't think you understand the legal gravity of the situation. Withholding a child against the will of her legal guardians constitutes the crime of kidnapping, and forging documents constitutes the crime of fraud," Audrey retorted, handing back the papers. "These documents are clearly fraudulent." Carter quickly put the papers away, his mask of cordiality beginning to slip. "You are making a grave mistake. My clients have important connections and the resources to ensure the law is enforced." "Your threats don't impress me," Will said, taking a step forward, "and I suggest you leave my property immediately." "This isn't over," Carter said, returning to his car. "I will be back with the proper documentation and, if necessary, with official support." After the car disappeared down the road, Lily ran to Will and clung to his legs, trembling violently. "Are they going to take me away? Are they going to sell me to bad people?" "Never," Will promised, kneeling to hug her. "I won't let anyone hurt you." Audrey approached, her expression dark. "Will, we've just entered very dangerous territory. If I'm right about what's happening here, Lily isn't just an abandoned child. She might be the victim of an organized scheme." "What kind of scheme?" "Trafficking of children with special abilities to wealthy families who see these children as investments or curiosities." Audrey looked at Lily, who had gone back to whispering calming words to the horses. Think about it. A child who can communicate with animals would be extremely valuable to someone who owns stud farms or related businesses. The revelation brought a terrible clarity to the situation. So Eleanor Morgan was using the shelter as a front, probably. And when Lily ran away, they invented this story about adoptive parents to get her back legally. Audrey paused. Will, if we fight this, we'll be up against people with resources and no scruples. I don't care, Will said, with a determination he hadn't felt in years. Lily trusts me. She saved my horses, and now I'm going to save her. That night, as Lily slept peacefully in the stable, surrounded by the horses that protected her, Will stayed awake on the porch, watching the stars and planning his next move. He knew the battle for the girl's safety was just beginning, and that he would face adversaries willing to do anything to recover what they considered their property. What he didn't know was that at that very moment, other events were being set in motion by people who had long awaited the chance to settle old scores, and that Lily's fate was intertwined with secrets far deeper and more dangerous than any of them imagined. 3 days after Carter's threatening visit, the seemingly calm routine at Will's farm was shattered by a discovery that would completely change his perspective on recent events. During the morning inspection of the horses, Lily made a disturbing observation that initially went unnoticed. Thunder is afraid to eat the grass in that corner, she said, pointing to a specific area of the pasture where the horse avoided stepping. He says the smell is wrong. Will observed that indeed Thunder and the other horses seemed to deliberately bypass that portion of the field, even though the grass looked identical to the rest. Intrigued, he approached the spot and knelt to examine the ground more closely. It was then that he noticed small fragments of something that didn't belong. Pieces of withered leaves that were definitely not native to the region. Audrey needs to see this, he murmured, carefully collecting some samples. When the vet arrived an hour later for her daily checkup, Will immediately led her to the suspicious spot. Her reaction upon examining the leaves was one of immediate alarm. Will, these are oleander leaves. It's a plant that's highly toxic to horses, she said, placing the samples in a plastic bag. Even small amounts can cause severe symptoms, including seizures and paralysis. But how did these plants get here? I've never seen anything like them growing naturally on the property, because they were planted intentionally, Audrey replied with growing gravity. Someone is trying to poison your horses. The revelation hit Will like a punch to the gut. Are you saying the snakes weren't a coincidence? I'm saying someone might have used the snakes as an initial distraction, and when that didn't work, they moved on to more direct methods. Audrey looked around the property with investigative eyes. Who has access to your farm? Just me, and now you two. But Will paused, an uncomfortable memory surfacing. There was an employee I fired about 2 months ago, Walter Miller. He worked here for 3 years, handling property maintenance. Why did you fire him? Negligence. I found him drinking on the job several times, and one day I discovered he was selling horse feed to other farmers. Will sighed heavily. He didn't take the dismissal well. Said I would regret humiliating him. Lily, who had remained silent during the conversation, suddenly lifted her head like an animal sniffing danger. Someone's watching us, she whispered, pointing to a dense thicket on the property line. Will and Audrey followed the girl's gaze and saw a male figure hidden among the trees. When he realized he'd been spotted, the man ran off, but not before they recognized his build and gait. "Walter!" Will said through gritted teeth. "He's been here sabotaging my property." "We need to notify the authorities," Audrey said, but Will shook his head. "We can't involve the police right now. If Carter Vance finds out we're dealing with legal troubles, he could use it to his advantage to prove this isn't a safe environment for Lily." It was at that moment that a second car came up the farm road. This time, it was a white van with the county shelter's logo on the side. Helen Carter, a 45-year-old social worker, got out of the vehicle accompanied by two uniformed security guards. Lily immediately ran to hide behind Will, clinging to his legs with desperate force. "Don't let them take me," she pleaded, her voice breaking in pure panic. "Mr. Thompson," Helen said with professional authority, "I'm Helen Carter, the social worker responsible for Lily Evans's case. I've received reports that the girl is being kept here against legal regulations." "What reports?" Will asked, keeping Lily protected behind him. "Information that your financial situation is unstable due to recent business losses, and that this environment may not be suitable for a child with special needs." Helen consulted a clipboard. "Furthermore, there are questions about your emotional capacity to care for a child, considering your history of depression following a traumatic divorce." The accuracy of the information left Will cold. How did Helen know such specific details about his personal and financial life? "Who provided this information?" "I cannot disclose confidential sources," Helen replied coolly. "But I have a court order to remove Lily from this property and take her back to the county shelter." "I'm not going," Lily screamed, her voice rising above a whisper for the first time since Will had met her. "Please, don't take me to Mrs. Morgan." Helen frowned. "Eleanor Morgan no longer works at the county shelter. She was transferred to another unit last week." "Transferred? Why?" Audrey asked, stepping closer. "Internal administrative matters," Helen answered vaguely. "The important thing is that Lily will be cared for by qualified professionals." At that moment, Lily did something no one expected. She let go of Will and ran straight to Thunder, the injured horse that was still recovering from the bites. With fluid, natural movements, she mounted the animal bareback and began talking to it in urgent whispers. To the astonishment of everyone present, Thunder responded to her words by calmly walking to the center of the yard and stopping in a protective stance, shielding Lily with his large body. Star and Storm followed suit, forming a defensive circle around the girl. "I won't let you take me," Lily said, her voice still trembling but filled with a new determination. "The horses are protecting me because they know I belong here." Helen looked at the security guards, clearly unsure how to proceed in the face of the equine barrier. "Mr. Thompson, order the girl to get off the horse immediately." "I can't order her," Will replied, realizing something extraordinary in Lily's demonstration. "She's not controlling the horses, she's communicating with them. They've chosen to protect her." "This is absurd," Helen protested. "Animals don't make conscious choices to protect humans." "These do," Audrey said with growing conviction. "I am documenting a phenomenon I have never seen before. Lily has a genuine connection with these animals that goes beyond any conventional explanation." For the next 20 minutes, the security guards tried various approaches to remove Lily from the horses, but the animals held their defensive position, moving in perfect sync to block any attempt to get close. It was as if they understood exactly what was happening and had consciously chosen a side. "This is ridiculous," Helen said finally, checking her phone. "I'm calling for backup and vets to sedate the animals if necessary." "There's no need for that," said a familiar voice behind them. Everyone turned to see Carter Vance walking toward the group, accompanied by an elegantly dressed couple Will didn't recognize. The man appeared to be in his 50s, with well-groomed grey hair and expensive clothes, while the woman was younger, blonde, with discreet but obviously valuable jewelry. "Allow me to introduce Benedict and Amelia Vance, Lily's legal adoptive parents," Carter said with a smile that didn't hide his satisfaction. Benedict stepped forward, observing the girl surrounded by horses, with eyes that gleamed with something that looked like greed disguised as paternal concern. "Ah, dear Lily," he said in a honeyed voice. "You've caused so much worry. We've come to take you home. We have a magnificent stud farm," added Amelia, her smile fixed and artificial, "with dozens of horses that would surely benefit from Lily's special skill." The way she pronounced special skill made Will's blood run cold. There was no love or genuine concern in these people's voices. There was business interest, as if Lily were a profitable investment rather than a child who needed protection. Lily, still mounted on Thunder, looked at the couple with an expression of recognized terror. "I remember them," she whispered to Will. "They came to Mrs. Morgan's house. They talked about how much money I could make for them. The revelation confirmed Will's worst suspicions. These people weren't parents, they were buyers, and Lily was the merchandise they had come to collect." The tension in the farmyard reached a critical point when Benedict decided to take a more direct approach. Ignoring Audrey's warnings about the horse's protective nature, he walked toward Lily with the presumed authority of someone accustomed to having his wishes met immediately. "Lily, dear, stop this foolishness and come here right now," he said in a voice that tried to sound paternal but carried an underlying threat. "We have a long way home." The horse's reaction was instantaneous and alarming. Thunder reared up slightly on his hind legs, completely blocking Benedict's path, while emitting a deep warning sound. Star and Storm positioned themselves on the flanks, creating an impenetrable barrier around the girl. "They don't like him," Lily murmured to Will, her voice filled with fear. "Thunder smells wickedness on him." "What is she saying?" Amelia asked with growing irritation, nervously adjusting the pearl necklace around her neck. "She said the horses don't trust you, sir," Will replied deliberately, watching as Benedict's expression hardened. "Animals are just that. Animals," Benedict said with disdain. "They have no capacity for moral judgment. The girl has clearly been trained to create this spectacle." "No one trained her to do this," Audrey protested. "What you are witnessing is a genuine and spontaneous connection." Carter intervened, consulting his expensive watch. "We've wasted enough time on this charade. Helen, execute the court order and remove the child from the animals, using force if necessary." It was at that moment that a new voice joined the discussion, a voice that made everyone turn in surprise. "I believe it would be prudent to reconsider that approach." It was Jessica Thompson, Will's ex-wife, walking toward the group with the calculated elegance he knew so well. At 38, she maintained the beauty that had once captivated him, but now her eyes carried a coldness he didn't remember seeing during their years of marriage. "Jessica?" Will said, genuinely shocked. "What are you doing here?" "Protecting my children's interests," she replied calmly, stopping a few feet from the group. "When I heard you had taken custody of a problem child without consulting anyone, I felt it necessary to intervene." "Your children have nothing to do with this," Will protested. "They have everything to do with it," Jessica retorted, pulling a folder from her elegant handbag. "This property is still partially in my name due to the divorce proceedings that were never fully finalized. And as Ryan and Megan's mother, I have the right to protect their inheritance from your impulsive decisions." The revelation hit Will like a physical blow. During their 3 years of separation, he had assumed all legal matters were settled, but apparently Jessica had kept some trump cards hidden. Furthermore, she continued, addressing Carter, "I took the liberty of investigating Will's current financial situation. I discovered he has substantial debts that were not properly declared." "What debts?" Will asked, confused. "The loan you took out to expand the business last year, the contract you signed with my current partner, Frank Archer." Jessica smiled coldly. "Frank owns the rival company that has bought out your main client base in recent months." The world seemed to collapse under Will's feet. Frank Archer was the businessman who had systematically stolen his best contracts by offering prices impossible to compete with. "You knew about this the whole time?" "Of course, I did. I was the one who provided the information necessary for Frank to make more attractive offers." Jessica adjusted her purse strap with evident satisfaction. "You were always too naive for business, Will. Someone needed to teach you a lesson about consequences." The systematic betrayal from his ex-wife left Will momentarily speechless, but it was Audrey who broke the silence. "Wait a moment," she said, examining the documents Jessica had presented. "These contracts have inconsistent dates, and this signature—" She looked closer. "Doesn't look genuine." "Are you implying I forged documents?" Jessica asked with calculated indignation. "I'm saying there are obvious irregularities here that need to be properly investigated," Audrey replied firmly. While the adults argued over legal and financial matters, Lily remained silent atop Thunder, observing everything with eyes that seemed to understand far more than a 4-year-old should. Suddenly, she leaned down and whispered something in the horse's ear. Thunder responded with a movement that surprised everyone. He began to walk slowly toward Jessica, stopping a few feet from her and fixing her with an intense gaze that clearly unnerved her. "What is that animal doing?" Jessica asked, instinctively backing away. "Thunder can sense when someone is lying," Lily said, her voice now clearer and stronger than before. "He's saying you smell strongly of lies." "This is ridiculous," Jessica protested, but there was nervousness in her voice. "Lily is right about you too," said a new voice behind them. Everyone turned to see Walter Miller emerging from the woods, but this time he wasn't hiding. He was walking deliberately toward the group, carrying a small box in his hands. "Walter, what are you doing here?" Will asked, tense. "I came to return something I stole," the ex-employee said, avoiding eye contact, "and to tell some truths you all need to hear." He opened the box, revealing several carefully packed toxic plants. "I was the one who planted these in the horse's pasture. Mrs. Thompson paid me a few $1,000s to do it." The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica visibly paled but tried to maintain her composure. "I don't know what this man is talking about." "Oh, yes, you do, ma'am," Walter insisted, pulling a phone from his pocket. "I have recordings of our conversations. You wanted the horses to get sick to prove Will couldn't even take care of animals, let alone a child." "Why?" Will asked, feeling a mix of betrayal and relief at finally understanding what was happening. "Because if you could prove he was an unfit father, you could claim full custody of the children and get the entire property," Walter explained. "But when I found out there was a little kid involved in the situation—" He paused, looking at Lily with a guilty expression. "My own daughter is her age. I couldn't keep being part of something that could hurt an innocent child." Walter's confession completely changed the dynamic of the situation. Helen, who had remained quiet throughout the revelation, now seemed to question her own information. "Mr. Vance," she said, addressing Carter, "I would like to re-examine the documentation presented to me in light of this new information." Carter tried to maintain his authority, but there was sweat on his brow. "These are baseless accusations from a disgruntled ex-employee. We shouldn't allow—" Actually, a new authoritative voice interrupted. "I believe it would be best if we examined all the documents involved in this case." A middle-aged woman in discreet professional attire approached the group, accompanied by 2 men in dark suits. "I'm Prosecutor Laura Evans from the District Attorney's Office. We've received anonymous tips about irregularities involving child custody in the region." She looked directly at Carter. "Mr. Vance, I would very much like to examine your documents and credentials." Carter's face had lost all color. Benedict and Amelia exchanged nervous glances, beginning to slowly back away toward their car. "I believe there has been some misunderstanding," Benedict said quickly. "Perhaps it's best we resolve this at another time." "Actually," Prosecutor Evans said firmly, "now is the perfect time to clear everything up." While the adults were embroiled in increasingly complex legal matters, Lily remained safe on Thunder, watching everything with a maturity that belied her age. She had witnessed lies being exposed, betrayals being revealed, and for the first time since Will had met her, there was a glint of genuine hope in her eyes. What she didn't know was that the day's revelations were just the beginning of a series of discoveries that would shake the foundations of everything they all thought they knew about her true identity and why so many people wanted to control her. Prosecutor Laura Evans' investigation revealed irregularities that went far beyond what anyone had imagined. Over the next 2 days, Will's property transformed into a hub of legal activity, with investigators collecting evidence and questioning witnesses. Lily, protected by the horses and kept away from the commotion, watched everything with a disturbing quietness that worried Audrey. "She's processing too much trauma for someone so little," the vet commented as she watched the girl draw in the sand with a stick. "Even with all this confusion being cleared up, she still carries the weight of what she lived through before." Will nodded, noticing how Lily had regressed to almost complete mutism since the authorities arrived. She only spoke in whispers to the horses, and even then, only when she thought no one was listening. It was during the second afternoon of investigations that the first major revelation emerged. Prosecutor Evans called a meeting with everyone involved in Will's living room, spreading documents across the table with a grave expression. "What we've discovered goes far beyond document forgery," she began, adjusting her glasses. "Carter Vance, Benedict and Amelia Vance, and Eleanor Morgan are involved in an exploitation ring that has been operating for at least 3 years. "What kind of ring?" Will asked, though he feared the answer. "They identify children with special abilities or distinctive characteristics in shelters and vulnerable situations, forge adoption documents, and place them with wealthy families who pay substantial sums for talented children." The prosecutor paused. "This isn't legitimate adoption. It's the commercialization of human beings." Audrey gasped. "How many children?" "From the records we've managed to recover, at least 15 in the last 3 years. Some were used as entertainment at elite parties, others as investments in specific businesses." Laura turned a page. "Lily's case is particular because her ability with animals has extreme commercial value. And the real families of these children?" asked Helen, who had remained silent throughout the revelation. "Most believe their children are in legitimate adoptive homes. The forged papers are convincing enough to deceive even experienced professionals." Will felt nausea rise in his stomach. "Does Lily have a real family looking for her?" "That's the most complicated question," Laura said, pulling out a specific file. "The records on Lily are inconsistent." She spread photographs and documents on the table. "According to Eleanor Morgan, Lily was voluntarily surrendered by relatives who couldn't care for her. But when we investigated these relatives—" "What?" Audrey pressed. "They don't exist. The addresses are fake. The names don't appear in any official records." Laura looked directly at Will. "Mr. Thompson, there's a possibility that Lily was kidnapped from her real family." The silence that followed was as heavy as lead. The idea that the girl he had grown to love could have desperate parents searching for her somewhere was both hopeful and devastating. "There's something else," the prosecutor continued. "We found Lily's medical records, which show she was subjected to intensive psychiatric treatments during her first months at the shelter." "What kind of treatments?" Will asked, his voice tense. "Memory suppression therapy, medications that can cause selective amnesia in young children." Laura paused, letting the information sink in. "It's possible that Lily has memories of her real family that were deliberately suppressed." Audrey stood up abruptly. "That explains the episodes of mutism and the fragmented, confused memories. They tried to erase her identity." "But why would anyone do that?" Will asked. "To make her more pliable, more dependent on her caregivers. A child with no memories of her real family is easier to control and sell." Laura's explanation was clinical, but charged with restrained outrage. At that moment, Lily appeared at the living room door, clearly drawn by the serious voices. She held a drawing she had made. It showed 2 adult figures holding a small girl's hands, with horses in the background and a bright sun in the sky. I dreamed about them again, she whispered, timidly approaching Will. The man and woman who sang me lullabies. Can you tell me about this dream? Laura asked gently. Lily looked at Will for encouragement before answering. They had a farm with lots of horses. The woman had long hair and smelled like flowers. The man took me riding on weekends. Do you remember their names? The woman was called Mama Rose, and the man was Papa. She paused, concentrating intensely. Papa Edward. Laura jotted down notes quickly. Lily, do you remember where this farm was? There was a church with a tall steeple nearby, and a river where we used to fish. The girl's eyes filled with tears. Did they look for me when I disappeared? The question broke everyone's heart. Will knelt in front of her, holding her small hands. We're going to find out, little one. I promise we'll find the truth. But I don't want to leave here, Lily said, her voice breaking. I like the horses. I like Mr. Will and Dr. Audrey. No one will force you to do anything you don't want to do, Will promised, even though he wasn't sure how he'd keep that promise. Laura intervened softly. Lily, if we find your real family, they'll want to meet with you first, talk, get to know you again. There's no rush for anything. After Lily returned to the stable, accompanied by Audrey, Laura continued with even more disturbing revelations. There are indications that this ring has connections to a larger network, she said, showing photographs of other individuals. We've found records of financial transactions involving influential people in the region. What kind of people? Will asked. Local politicians, prominent business owners, even some professionals in the health and social service fields. Laura paused. The money involved in these transactions is substantial. Some adoptions cost over $100,000. And Jessica, what was her role in all this? Your ex-wife seems to have gotten involved recently, probably through Frank Archer. He has connections with some of the people who bought children from the ring. Laura consulted her notes. We believe the plan was to ruin you financially and use Lily as a bargaining chip to settle debts Frank had with dangerous people. The revelation that his own ex-wife was willing to use an innocent child as debt payment made Will sick. What kind of debts? Frank Archer has a gambling problem. He owes considerable amounts to people who don't take non-payment well. Laura closed the file. Lily would be valuable enough to clear those debts and still generate a profit. What happens now? Now we begin the search for Lily's real family while we prosecute everyone involved in the scheme. Laura stood up. Mr. Thompson, you can officially maintain temporary custody of Lily during the investigation, but I need you to understand, if we find her biological parents, they will have legal priority. I understand, Will said, though his heart tightened at the possibility. That night, as he watched Lily sleep peacefully among the horses, wrapped in clean blankets, Will found himself thinking about the complexities of love. He had grown to love that girl as if she were his own daughter. But he knew that true love sometimes meant being willing to let go. What he didn't know was that the next discoveries about Lily's identity would bring revelations none of them were prepared to face, and that the real battle for the girl's soul was just beginning. The search for Lily's real family took an unexpected turn when prosecutor Laura Evans returned to the farm the next morning, accompanied by a middle-aged woman with graying hair and an expression marked by suffering. Rose Miller, 42, brought with her photographs that would make everyone's world collapse and rebuild itself anew. We found her, Laura said without preamble, watching as Will turned pale. This is Rose Miller. She and her husband Edward have been searching for their daughter for 2 years. Rose held the photographs with trembling hands, tears already streaming down her face before she even caught sight of Lily. In the images, a 2-year-old girl played in a yard full of horses, always accompanied by a couple who radiated paternal love. My Clara, Rose whispered, using a name that made Lily lift her head from the other side of the yard where she was feeding Thunder. My little Clara. Lily dropped the feed bucket and walked slowly toward the group, her eyes fixed on Rose with an expression of confused recognition. Mama Rose, she whispered, her voice filled with uncertainty and hope. My angel, Rose replied, kneeling on the ground and extending her arms. Mommy has looked for you for so long. What followed was a moment of pure emotion as Lily ran into Rose's arms, both crying and hugging, as if trying to reclaim 2 years of forced separation. Will watched the scene with an indescribable mix of joy and pain. Joy at seeing Lily reunited with her mother, pain at the realization that he would lose the girl he had learned to love as a daughter. How did she disappear? Audrey asked, wiping away her own tears. Clara was playing in the yard of our farm in Boone when 2 men came to the door saying they were social workers, Rose explained, not letting go of her daughter. They presented official-looking documents claiming anonymous reports of abuse and said they needed to take Clara for a temporary evaluation. You didn't question them? Will asked. We did, but the documents looked legitimate. They said it would only be for a few days while they investigated the reports. Rose hugged Lily tighter. When we tried to visit the address they gave us, we found it was an empty office. Our Clara had simply vanished. Laura consulted her notes. The documents were perfect forgeries, created by a network that included corrupt employees in the social services system. Edward and Rose spent 2 years searching for Clara through official channels that were deliberately misleading them. Where is my papa, Edward? Lily asked, looking around for her father. Rose's face clouded over. Papa Edward got very sick from looking for you so much, my angel. He's in the hospital, but he'll get better when he knows we've found you. Can I see him? Lily insisted. Of course you can, my little one. He's waiting for you to come home. The word home hit Will like a dagger. Lily had a real home, a family that loved her and had never stopped looking for her. As painful as it was, he knew it was the right destiny for her. Clara was always special with animals, Rose said, watching as Thunder cautiously approached to sniff the newcomer. Since she was a baby, she could calm any animal just with her presence. It's true, Lily confirmed, her personality gradually returning as she felt safe with her mother. The animals always understood me, but in the place they took me, they said it was for crazy people. It was never for crazy people, Rose said firmly. It's a special gift your grandmother also had. That's why some bad people wanted to take you, to use your gift to make money. Over the next few hours, Rose told stories about Lily's life before the kidnapping, revealing details that confirmed she was indeed Clara Miller. The girl's memories began to return gradually, recollections of specific horses, of lullabies, of afternoons fishing in the river with Edward. Mama Rose, Lily said suddenly, can I take Thunder home with me? He got very sad when I almost left with the bad people. My angel, Thunder isn't ours. He belongs to Mr. Will, who took such good care of you. Lily looked at Will with a worried expression. Mr. Will, are you going to be all alone without me and without Thunder? The innocent question hit Will full force. Indeed, he would be completely alone again, without the luminous presence that had given new meaning to his life. I'll be fine, little one. The important thing is that you're with your real family. But you're my family too, Lily protested. You took care of me when I was scared. Can you come live with us? Rose looked at Will with deep gratitude. Mr. Thompson, there are no words to thank you for what you've done for my daughter. If there's anything we can do, taking good care of her is more than enough, Will replied, struggling to keep his voice steady. It was then that Audrey spoke up with an observation that would change everything again. Wait a moment, she said, examining the photographs Rose had brought. When exactly are these photos from? The last few months before Clara disappeared. Why? Because Lily. Clara. Oh, looks exactly the same in these photos as she does now. She hasn't grown an inch in 2 years. The silence that followed was heavy with disturbing implications. Children from 2.5 to 4.5 normally grow noticeably. The medications, Laura murmured, the psychiatric treatments she received. We need to investigate if they affected her physical development. What kind of effects? Rose asked, clearly alarmed. Some heavy psychiatric drugs can stunt growth in young children, especially if administered for prolonged periods, Audrey explained. Clara needs a full medical examination. We'll arrange that immediately, Laura said. But there's another problem we need to discuss. She paused, clearly reluctant to continue. During our investigations, we discovered that Edward Miller isn't just sick. He's being investigated for participation in the very scheme that kidnapped Clara. The revelation struck Rose like lightning. That's impossible. Edward would never do something like that. The evidence suggests he was coerced, Laura continued. It seems that after months of fruitless searching, someone convinced him that the only way to get Clara back was to participate in the scheme to get inside information. Did Papa Edward become a bad person? Lily asked, clearly confused. No, my angel, Rose said, hugging her tighter. Papa Edward just did desperate things because he wanted you back, but that means Clara might not be safe even with her biological family, Audrey observed. If Edward is under investigation. Exactly, Laura confirmed. Until we completely resolve this situation, Clara will need to remain in temporary custody. Can I stay here with Mr. Will and also visit Mama Rose? Lily asked with the simple logic of a child. The suggestion brought visible relief to all the adults. It would be a solution that would allow Clara to gradually reconnect with her real family while maintaining the stability she had found with Will. I think we can arrange something like that, Laura said. Supervised visits initially, expanding as Clara feels comfortable. That afternoon, as Lily played in the yard with Rose, watching her every move as if fearing she might disappear again, Will stepped away to process the conflicting emotions consuming him. He was happy Clara had found her real mother, but also terrified at the possibility of losing her completely. Audrey approached him on the porch. How are you handling all of this? I don't know, Will admitted. I love that girl as if she were my own daughter, but I know she belongs with Rose. What if she doesn't have to choose? Audrey suggested softly, what if she can have 2 families that love her? It was a thought that offered hope, but Will knew life was rarely so simple. What they didn't yet know was that the next revelations about Edward and the criminal scheme would test all the bonds that had been formed, forcing decisions none of them were prepared to face. Edward Miller's situation proved to be even more complex when Prosecutor Laura returned 3 days later with information that shook the foundations of everything they had understood so far. Edward wasn't just sick. He had disappeared from the hospital during the night, leaving only a desperate note that would change the fate of everyone involved. He fled the hospital, Laura announced, showing a photocopy of the handwritten note. And he left this. Forgive me for what I did. I need to fix my mistakes before they hurt my family. Clara is in danger as long as I'm involved. Take care of her until I can come back clean. Rose collapsed in tears upon hearing her husband's words. He was always too proud. He must be trying to solve this on his own, without understanding the danger he's in. What kind of danger? Will asked, watching as Lily timidly approached, clearly sensing the adult's tension. Edward got involved with dangerous people trying to track Clara. We found out he provided information about other vulnerable families in exchange for clues about his daughter's whereabouts. Laura paused gravely. Without knowing it, he helped the scheme kidnap 3 more children. The revelation was a devastating blow to Rose. My Edward would never intentionally hurt children. He must be desperate with guilt. Mama Rose is crying, Lily observed, climbing into Will's lap for safety. Did Papa Edward do something bad? Papa Edward made mistakes trying to find you, my angel, Rose explained gently. But now he's trying to fix those mistakes. It was at that moment that Audrey came running from the stable area, her face pale with concern. Will, we have a serious problem. I found Storm down in the pasture. He's showing signs of poisoning again. The group ran to the stable where Storm lay on the ground, trembling and breathing heavily. Audrey was already preparing medication when Lily slid from Will's arms and approached the sick horse. He's saying the poison is different this time, she whispered, placing her small hands on the animal's muzzle. It didn't come from the bad plants. It came from something he drank. The water? Audrey asked, immediately alert. No, from something sweet someone gave him. Lily closed her eyes, concentrating on the silent communication with Storm, a man who smelled of fear and sadness. Will's blood ran cold. Edward is here. As if summoned by the words, Edward Miller emerged from the shadows of the stable, a 45-year-old man, visibly gaunt and desperate. His clothes were dirty, a beard covered his face, and his eyes carried the weight of unbearable guilt. I didn't want to hurt the horses, he said in a broken voice. I just wanted you to listen to me without calling the police. Papa Edward! Lily cried, running toward him. Edward knelt to receive her, tears streaming down his face. My little Clara, Papa made terrible mistakes trying to find you. Why did you poison Storm? Will asked, keeping his distance but without hostility. Because I knew if the horses got sick, you'd have to listen to me. I needed to explain. Edward hugged Lily as he spoke. The people I gave information to found out Clara has been found. They're coming after all of us. What people? Laura asked, cautiously approaching. The real bosses of the scheme. Carter, Eleanor, the Vances, they were just intermediaries. The real bosses never showed their faces. But now that the operation is exposed, they want to eliminate the evidence. What kind of evidence? Laura insisted. The children, Edward answered simply. All the children who were sold carry information that could incriminate powerful people. Clara is especially dangerous because her ability with animals made her too valuable. They won't give up on her easily. Rose turned pale. Are you saying our daughter is still in danger? I'm saying you are all in danger for protecting her. Edward stood up, still holding Lily. That's why I ran from the hospital. I needed to warn you and try to negotiate for Clara's safety. Negotiate how? Audrey asked, continuing her care of Storm, by turning myself in. If I confess everything I know and take full responsibility, maybe they'll leave Clara alone. That's madness, Will protested. You'd be signing your own death sentence. I'd rather do that than see my family suffer for my wrong choices. Lily looked at her father with an expression serious beyond her 4 years. Papa Edward, the horses told me that running away never solves anything. They always come back to the herd when they have problems. Lily's childish wisdom touched Edward deeply. You've grown so much, my little one, even after everything you've been through. She grew up because she had people who loved her unconditionally, Rose said firmly, and now we have a bigger family to protect her. It was at that moment that the sound of approaching cars made everyone tense up. 3 black SUVs drove up the property's road, stopping in a formation that clearly blocked any possibility of escape. They followed me, Edward whispered, panic taking over his voice. I led them straight to Clara. Men in dark clothing got out of the vehicles, moving with military precision. They carried no visible weapons, but their intimidating presence made it clear they were professionals in conflict situations. Dr. Edward Miller, a commanding voice shouted from the group, "We know you're in there. We just want to talk." Conversations that end with people disappearing, Edward muttered. Lily, sensing the fear of the adults around her, did something unexpected. She approached Thunder and whispered something in his ear. The horse responded with a loud neigh that was immediately echoed by Star and Storm. despite his weakened condition. "The horses will protect us," she said with a childish conviction that contrasted with the terror of the situation. "Clara, horses can't protect us from dangerous people," Rose said gently. "These can," Lily replied. "They told me that when animals unite, bad people get scared. As if obeying an invisible signal, more horses began to appear from neighboring properties, drawn by the calls. In a few minutes, at least 15 horses surrounded Will's property, creating a natural barrier between the farm's occupants and the threatening men. "This is impossible," one of the men in black muttered, clearly disconcerted by the unprecedented situation. "Clara has always had special gifts," Edward said with pride, mixed with fear. "But I've never seen anything like this, Doctor." "Miller," the commanding voice shouted again, "we have a proposal that will benefit your entire family. Come and talk to us." "Don't go, Papa," Lily pleaded. "The horses are saying they're lying." Edward looked at his daughter, then at the horses forming an almost mystical protection around them, and finally at the people who had cared for Clara when he couldn't. A new determination shone in his eyes. "No," he shouted back, "the conversations are over. My daughter is safe here, and this is where she's going to stay." What none of them knew was that this demonstration of unity and courage would trigger a sequence of events that would test not only the strength of the bonds they had created, but also reveal the true extent of Lily's special power and the reasons why so many powerful people wanted to control her. The standoff lasted for several tense hours, with the men in black remaining in their vehicles while the horses kept a protective vigil around the property. Lily had positioned herself in the center of the group, constantly whispering to the animals, who responded with coordinated movements that perplexed all the adults. "I've never seen anything like this in 40 years of working with animals," Audrey murmured, watching as the horses seemed to take turns on guard duty. "It's as if they've developed a military protection system." It was during twilight that the situation took a dramatic turn. One of the men in black approached the horse barrier carrying something that made everyone's heart race, a portable loudspeaker. "Dr. Edward Miller," the amplified voice echoed. "We know you're listening. We have some people here who would like to speak with you." The sound that came from the speaker next made Edward collapse to his knees. It was the voice of Ryan and Megan, his 8- and 10-year-old children from his first marriage, who lived with their mother in another city. "Daddy, we're scared," cried Megan's voice. "The men said you did bad things and we'll only see you again if you cooperate." "Daddy, please do what they're asking," Ryan pleaded. "We want to go home." Edward covered his face with his hands, his body shaking with desperate sobs. "My children. They took my other children." "It's a lie," Lily said with surprising conviction for someone so young. "The horses can sense when sounds are fake. Those voices are coming from a machine, not from real children." "How can you be sure?" Rose asked, holding her daughter tightly. "Because horses hear things people don't. Thunder is saying there's no smell of scared children near the bad cars." Will observed the men through binoculars and confirmed Lily's intuition. "She's right. I don't see any children in any of the vehicles." "So, it's psychological blackmail," concluded Laura, who had been in constant contact with reinforcements via a satellite phone the men couldn't intercept. "Dr. Miller," the loudspeaker voice continued, "you have 15 minutes to surrender voluntarily, or we will be forced to take more drastic measures." "What measures?" Edward shouted back. "We have information on everyone who helped hide Clara. Will Thompson, Audrey Clark, even prosecutor Laura Evans. We can make everyone's lives very complicated." It was then that Walter Miller appeared unexpectedly, running along the side trail of the property. The ex-employee was carrying a heavy backpack, his expression a mix of determination and remorse. "Will," he shouted, stopping to catch his breath, "I brought something that might help." "Walter, it's dangerous for you to be here. Will warned. It's more dangerous to let these people hurt you all because of my mistakes. Walter opened the backpack, revealing electronic equipment and several data storage units. During the time I worked with the horse smugglers, I recorded everything. I have evidence that could bring down the entire network. Horse smugglers? Audrey asked. The child scheme was just one part of it. They also stole purebred horses to sell on the international black market. Walter connected one of the devices to a laptop. Clara wasn't just valuable for her ability with animals. She can identify stolen horses just by touching them. What do you mean? Edward asked, getting up. Each horse has a kind of unique emotional signature. Clara can read these signatures and know if an animal was separated from its original family. Walter showed files on the laptop. That's why they wanted her so badly. With her, they could identify and steal the best horses in the region without error. Lily approached the laptop and looked at the images of horses on the screen. This one is very sad, she said, pointing to a photo. He was taken from his mother when he was little. Exactly, Walter confirmed, and this file proves they planned to use Clara to build a horse theft operation that would generate millions. So it was never about adoption, Rose murmured. It was about using our daughter as a tool for crime. Dr. Miller, the loudspeaker blared again, your time is running out. It was at that moment that Lily made a decision that would change everything. She stepped away from the adults and walked toward the horse barrier, whispering something that made all the animals move simultaneously. Clara, come back here, Rose cried in panic, but Lily kept walking until she was visible to the men in the cars. When she spoke, her small voice carried an authority no one expected. You want to talk to me, not my Papa Edward, she said clearly. I am Clara Miller, and I know you wanted me to hurt horses. The silence that followed was tense and heavy. Finally, a figure stepped out of the lead car, an elegant woman of about 50, wearing expensive clothes and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Hello, Clara, she said in a honeyed voice. My name is Valerie Andrews. I have a very profitable business to propose to your parents. I don't want to do business with people who lie about kidnapping children. Lily replied with a firmness that impressed all the adults. Darling, you don't understand the complexities of the adult world, Valerie continued, slowly approaching. Your special ability could help many families find their lost horses. Lie, Lily said simply. You want to steal happy horses and sell them to people who will mistreat them. The direct accusation made Valerie momentarily lose her composure. A child cannot comprehend legitimate business. A child can comprehend when adults are bad, Lily interrupted, and you are very bad. At that moment, the sound of helicopters began to approach. Laura smiled for the first time in hours. The reinforcements have arrived. This isn't over, Valerie threatened, retreating toward the cars. Clara Miller legally belongs to us, and we will get her back. Clara Miller belongs to the family that loves her, Edward replied, finally finding the courage to stand beside his daughter. And that family includes everyone who protected her when I failed. As the helicopters landed and federal agents began to surround the black SUVs, Lily did something no one expected. She ran back to the horse barrier and whispered something that made all the animals disperse calmly, as if they knew their mission was complete. How did you know they were liars? Will asked, kneeling beside her. Because people who truly love you don't threaten the people you love, Lily replied with profound simplicity. They protect everyone together. And now, Rose asked, watching Valerie being handcuffed by federal agents. Now we uncover the whole truth, Laura said with determination, and we ensure that Clara has the family she deserves, a family that includes everyone who chose to love her unconditionally. What none of them knew was that the investigations in the coming days would reveal even deeper secrets about Lily's true identity and the reason why her abilities were considered so valuable by people willing to commit any crime to control her. The arrest of Valerie Andrews and her team revealed only the tip of the iceberg of a criminal operation that spanned 3 states. During the interrogations over the following days, a disturbing truth about Lily emerged that no one had imagined. She was not just a child with special abilities, but the heiress to a substantial fortune that had been systematically stolen during her 2 years of captivity. "We've discovered something extraordinary," Prosecutor Laura announced at an urgent meeting convened at Will's farm. "Clara is not just Clara Miller. She is also Clara Clark Miller, great-granddaughter of the late Colonel Anthony Clark, one of the most prominent horse breeders in the country." Edward and Rose looked at each other, confused. "That's impossible," Rose said. "We've never heard of any Colonel Clark." "Because you didn't know," Laura continued, spreading old documents on the table. Clara's biological mother was Helen Clark, the Colonel's daughter, who disappeared 6 years ago, leaving baby Clara in your care through an informal adoption. "Helen," Edward whispered. "The woman who showed up at our door with Clara in her arms, saying she couldn't take care of her." "Exactly. Helen was fleeing from people who wanted to force her to sign documents, transferring her grandfather's inheritance to a shell company." Laura showed old photographs. Colonel Clark left a 1,000-hectare farm, a stud with over 200 purebred horses, and a fortune estimated at $15 million. Audrey, who had remained silent, suddenly turned pale. "Clark. My maiden name is Clark. Could it be?" "You are Clara's distant cousin," Laura confirmed. "We discovered this while investigating family connections. Colonel Anthony was your father's great-uncle." The revelation hit Audrey like a lightning bolt. All these months caring for Lily, she had developed a special connection with the girl that now made genetic sense. "So Clara is rich?" asked Lily, who had been quietly listening to the conversation. "Very rich," Laura confirmed, "and that's exactly why they kidnapped you. With you missing, Helen was forced to sign powers of attorney, transferring the inheritance to the criminals." "What happened to Helen?" Edward asked, holding his wife's hand. "We're still investigating, but we believe she's alive, hiding somewhere, afraid to come back while the criminals controlled Clara." "My real mother is alive?" Lily asked, her eyes filling with tears. "We believe so, little one. And now that we've arrested those responsible, she may be safe to return." Rose held Lily close, her own emotions in conflict. For 2 years, she'd been the only mother Clara knew. But now she discovered the girl had a biological mother who had also protected her in her own way. "Does this change anything between us?" Lily asked, looking at Rose with concern. "It changes nothing about the love we feel for you," Rose promised. "But it means you might have even more people who love you." Over the next week, as authorities tracked Helen Clark, life at Will's farm began to take a new turn. Lily started dividing her time between the property, visits with Rose and Edward, and sessions with specialists who were assessing the extent of her abilities with animals. "Her gifts are genuinely unique," explained Dr. Robert Silver, an expert in animal behavior brought in specially from a major university. "Clara can not only communicate with horses, but with virtually any domestic mammal. It's a phenomenon science doesn't yet fully understand." "Is it hereditary?" Audrey asked, fascinated by the findings. "Apparently so. We found old records showing that Colonel Clark was famous for his mysterious ability with horses. It was said he never used whips or spurs because the animals obeyed his voice alone." Lily smiled upon hearing this. "So my great-grandfather talked to horses too?" "It seems so, and your ability may be even more developed than his." It was during these evaluations that something happened that would change everyone's destiny again. A woman of about 30 appeared at the entrance to the property, walking slowly up the road as if each step were a painful decision. She was thin, pale, and her simple clothes contrasted with the natural elegance of her movements. Lily, who was playing in the yard with the horses, suddenly stopped everything she was doing and turned toward the stranger. "Mom," she whispered, her voice filled with instinctive recognition. Helen Clark stopped 20 yards from the house, tears streaming down her face. "My little Clara, you've grown so much." "Mommy Helen!" Lily cried, running toward her biological mother. The meeting was both emotional and devastating. Helen hugged her daughter as if she feared she would disappear again, while all the adults watched with conflicting feelings. "I looked for you for so long," Helen sobbed. "When I heard they had found you, I was afraid you wouldn't remember me." "I remember your voice," Lily said, stroking her mother's face. "You used to sing horse songs to help me sleep. I still know all of them," Helen promised. Over the next few hours, Helen told her story of flight and hiding. For 2 years, she had lived in constant terror, changing her identity and location whenever the criminals got close. She only felt safe to return after learning of the arrest of Valerie and her associates. "I never stopped thinking about Clara," she explained, "but I knew that as long as they were looking for me, she would be in danger if she stayed with me." "So you left Clara with our family to protect her?" Rose asked. "I left her with the only people I felt would love her as their own daughter," Helen replied. "And I was right. You gave Clara the love and stability I couldn't provide." "And now?" Will asked, fearing the answer. Helen looked at each adult present, then at Lily, who was playing quietly in Rose's lap while listening to the conversation. "Now Clara has a choice she shouldn't have to make." "What choice?" the girl asked. "To choose where she wants to live? Who she wants to spend her days with?" Helen took a deep breath. "You can come with me to your great-grandfather's farm, where we have hundreds of horses waiting for you, or you can stay here with the people who took care of you when I couldn't." "Can I choose both?" Lily asked, with the simple logic of childhood. "What do you mean, dear? Can I live here with Papa Will, Mama Rose, Papa Edward, and Aunt Audrey, and visit you at the horse farm on weekends?" The girl's proposal brought visible relief to all the adults. Helen smiled through her tears. "If all these wonderful people agree, I think that would be perfect. More than perfect," Will said. "It would be a real family." That night, as Lily slept peacefully in the stable surrounded by the horses she had grown to love, the adults remained on the porch, discussing the practical arrangements of this unconventional family. "Clara's inheritance will ensure she has all the resources needed for a good education and a prosperous future," Helen said. "But more important than money is the love she found here. And she will always have that love," Rose promised. What none of them knew was that the coming days would bring a final discovery that would not only close all the mysteries of Lily's past, but also reveal a secret about her true identity that would forever change how they all saw her. The final discovery about Lily came in a completely unexpected way during a routine visit to the ancestral Clark farm. Helen had taken the girl to see the property that would one day be her inheritance, accompanied by the entire extended family they had formed over those tumultuous months. The Black Mountain Farm stretched over green hills as far as the eye could see, with equestrian facilities that looked like something out of a dream. More than 200 horses grazed in perfectly manicured fields, while the main house, a majestic colonial building, stood as a monument to the region's tradition. "Was all this my great-grandfather's?" Lily asked, her eyes shining with fascination as she surveyed the vast property. "All of this is yours now," Helen corrected. "Colonel Anthony left everything in his will to his direct descendants. It was when they entered the main house that something happened that would change everything once more." Lily stopped abruptly in the entrance hall, looking at an old portrait hanging on the main wall. The painting showed an elderly man with a white beard next to a small girl with brown hair and large eyes. Is that me? Lily asked, pointing to the child in the portrait. Helen examined the painting more closely and turned pale. No, my angel. This is your Aunt Catherine, your mother's twin sister. My sister. I have an aunt who looks like me? You had one, Helen corrected sadly. Catherine disappeared when she was 4, the exact age you are now. This portrait was painted just days before she vanished. Audrey, who was examining other portraits in the room, made a disturbing observation. Helen, the resemblance between Clara and Catherine is impossible to ignore. It's as if they are the same child. Identical twins can have very similar-looking children, Helen replied, but there was uncertainty in her voice. Mommy Helen, Lily said suddenly, can I see the room where Aunt Catherine slept? Of course, dear. Helen led the group down the hall to a room that had been kept exactly as it was for decades. A small canopy bed, old toys arranged on shelves, and walls decorated with children's drawings of horses. Lily entered the room and immediately went to a porcelain doll sitting in a small chair. Amelia, she said, picking up the doll. I called her Amelia. The silence that followed was fraught with impossibility. Helen slowly approached her daughter. Clara, how do you know the name of Catherine's doll? Because I remember her. I remember playing in this room, sleeping in this bed. Lily looked around with growing familiarity. I remember the smell of the flowers Grandma planted under the window. That's impossible, Edward muttered. Clara is 4 now. Catherine disappeared 40 years ago. Will, who had remained quiet, approached the room's window and looked at the garden below. Helen, are those the flowers your grandmother planted? Yes, Jasmine. My grandmother said Catherine loved their scent, and Lily always talks about flowers that smelled just like the ones her first mommy cared for, Rose observed. Audrey more carefully examined the dates on the portraits scattered around the room. Folks, there's something very strange here. This portrait of Catherine is dated 1985, but the photo quality looks much more recent. Helen picked up the portrait Audrey indicated, and her expression changed dramatically. My God, this isn't the original portrait of Catherine. What do you mean? Will asked. The original portrait was stolen when the house was broken into 5 years ago, along with other valuables. Helen turned the photograph over and found a modern label on the back. This is a reproduction made from a photograph the intruders took before stealing the original. Who would do that? Asked Laura, who had accompanied the group. Someone who wanted to study the resemblance between Catherine and another child, Helen replied slowly, the pieces of the puzzle fitting together in her mind. Someone who wanted to confirm an impossible suspicion. Lily, who had continued exploring the room, opened an old drawer and pulled out a small sketchbook. My horse drawings, she said naturally, flipping through the pages. Everyone gathered to see. The drawings were clearly old, made with faded colored pencils, but they showed the same style and the same types of horses that Lily currently drew. Clara, Helen said in a trembling voice, you couldn't have made these drawings. They're decades old. But I remember making them, Lily insisted. I remember drawing Golden Star, great-grandpa's favorite horse. Helen dropped the book from her hands. Golden Star died 35 years ago. I never told you about him. Dr. Robert Silver, who had accompanied the group as a consultant, spoke up with a theory no one wanted to consider. There is an extremely rare medical possibility that could explain this. What possibility? Audrey asked. Genetic memory. In exceptionally rare cases, intense trauma can be transmitted through DNA, creating memories that seem personal but are, in fact, hereditary. Are you suggesting Clara inherited Catherine's memories? Edward asked. I'm suggesting Clara might be Catherine, Dr. Silver replied gravely. There is a very rare medical syndrome where extreme trauma can cause a sort of suspension of aging in very young children. The silence that followed was deafening. The idea was scientifically impossible, but the evidence was piling up in a disturbing way. That would explain why Clara didn't grow during her 2 years of kidnapping, Audrey murmured, and why her abilities with animals are so developed, and why she remembers events that happened decades before she was born, Will added. Helen knelt in front of Lily, looking deep into the girl's eyes. Darling, do you remember what it was like before you came to live with Rose and Edward? Lily closed her eyes, concentrating intensely. I remember a big house with lots of horses. I remember a man with a white beard who taught me to talk to the animals. I remember bad people who came at night and took me away. And after that? After that, everything was dark for a long time, like I slept for years and woke up in a different house with different people. Lily opened her eyes, which were shining with tears, but I always knew I had a family waiting for me somewhere. My sister, Helen whispered. You are my sister, Catherine. The revelation hit everyone like an emotional tsunami. If it were true, it meant Lily was not a 4-year-old child, but a 44-year-old woman who had remained a child due to impossible medical circumstances. How do we prove this? Rose asked, hugging Lily protectively. DNA tests, Dr. Silver replied, and detailed medical analyses that can detect anomalies in cellular aging. And if it's true, Will asked, what does that mean for Clara? It means she is legally the direct heiress to the entire Clark fortune, Laura answered, and that all the people who loved her as a child will continue to be her family, regardless of her chronological age. Lily looked at each person around her, Helen, Rose, Edward, Will, Audrey, and smiled with the same radiant innocence that had captivated everyone from day one. It doesn't matter how old I am, she said. What matters is that now I have a big family that loves me, and horses that understand me, and beautiful memories to keep alongside the new ones we're making. That night, as they awaited the test results that would confirm or deny the impossible theory, everyone knew that regardless of the truth about Lily's identity, she would forever be the brave girl who had transformed all their lives through unconditional love and a magical connection to the animal world that surrounded them. The test results arrived 3 weeks later, bringing confirmation of a truth that defied all known medical logic. Dr. Robert Silver called a special meeting at the Black Mountain Farm to present findings that would forever change everyone's understanding of Lily. The DNA tests confirmed that Clara is, in fact, Catherine Clark, he announced, spreading medical reports across the main living room table. But that's just the beginning of the extraordinary discoveries. Helen held Lily's hand tightly, still processing the reality that the girl she had raised as a daughter was, in fact, her twin sister. How is this medically possible? Catherine suffers from an extremely rare condition called traumatic Peter Pan syndrome, Dr. Silver explained. The severe trauma of the kidnapping at age 4 triggered a neurological defense mechanism that literally stopped her physical and mental aging. So I really am a 44-year-old child? Lily asked with the natural curiosity that had captivated everyone. Physically, you have remained 4 years old. Mentally, you've developed a unique wisdom that combines decades of experience with childlike innocence, Dr. Silver replied. Your brain created a state of suspension that protected you from the trauma. Will, who had remained quiet during the explanation, spoke up with evident concern. And now, can she start aging normally again? Curiously, since being rescued and placed in a loving, safe environment, we've detected signs that the aging process is slowly reactivating, Dr. Silver said, showing complex charts. In simple terms, love is healing what trauma froze. Audrey examined the reports with professional fascination. Does this mean Clara might eventually grow up and age like a normal person? She might, but at a different rate. It could take her decades to reach her actual chronological age, or she might remain young forever, Dr. Silver paused. Medicine simply has no precedent to predict with certainty. And is that bad? Lily asked, observing the worried expressions of the adults around her. It's not bad or good, Helen answered gently. It's simply special, like everything about you. Over the following weeks, everyone's life gradually settled into a new normal that no one had imagined possible. Lily divided her time between the ancestral Clark farm, where she learned about her heritage and worked with hundreds of horses, and Will's property, where she maintained the emotional bonds that had become fundamental to her healing. Today, the horses told me something interesting, Lily said during a joint dinner that brought her entire extended family together. They said, "It doesn't matter what body I have. What matters is how many people I love and how many love me back." Horses are very wise, agreed Edward, who had found redemption caring for the animals injured during the criminal scheme. "Almost as wise as you," added Rose, kissing the forehead of the girl she still considered her daughter, regardless of the revelations about her true age. The Clark inheritance allowed Lily to establish a sanctuary for rescued horses, where mistreated or abandoned animals found specialized care and unconditional love. Will became the sanctuary's official administrator, finding new purpose in a life that had lost its meaning after his divorce. "I never imagined my life would change so much because of a girl who saved my horses," he said to Audrey during a particularly beautiful sunset. "And I never imagined I'd find a whole family caring for injured animals," replied Audrey, who had moved permanently to the area to oversee the sanctuary's veterinary care. Walter, redeemed by his confessions and genuine remorse, became the head foreman of the sanctuary, dedicating himself to repairing the damage he had caused by meticulously caring for each rescued animal. "Little Clara taught me it's never too late to choose to do good," he said, watching Lily work with a particularly traumatized horse. Jessica, whose crimes were deemed less severe due to coercion from Frank Archer, served community service at the sanctuary itself, where she gradually understood the superficiality of the values that had guided her former life. "She even forgave you," Will observed during one of the supervised visits Jessica had with her children. "Lily taught me that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the wrong someone did," Jessica replied. "It's about choosing not to let that wrong define the future." 6 months after the revelation of Lily's true identity, she made a discovery that brought the perfect closure to her extraordinary journey. Exploring an old chest in the attic of the ancestral home, she found a diary that Colonel Anthony had kept during the years he cared for her as a child. "Listen to this," she said, reading aloud to Helen. "Catherine possesses a gift that transcends human understanding. She converses with horses as if she speaks their native tongue, and they respond with a loyalty I have never seen. I believe she was sent to teach us about unconditional love. Grandpa Anthony knew you were special," Helen murmured. "And here," Lily continued, turning ancient pages, he wrote, "If anything happens to me, I hope Catherine finds people who love her purity and protect her gifts. The world needs souls like hers." "He was right," said Will, who had come up to help explore the attic. "You found exactly the people he wished for." "No," Lily corrected with a wisdom that combined decades of experience with a child's heart. "You found me. And together we discovered that family isn't about blood or age or time. It's about choosing to love without conditions." In the final entry of the diary, dated just days before Catherine's original kidnapping, the Colonel had written a prophecy that came true 40 years later. "I have faith that no matter what happens, Catherine will always find her way back home. Because home isn't a place, it's where we are loved exactly as we are." 2 years after the impossible reunion of a family that defied all conventions, Lily Catherine Clark Miller celebrated her 6th birthday, or 46th, depending on how you counted the years. The party took place at the sanctuary, surrounded by over 300 rescued horses and dozens of people whose lives had been transformed by a girl who proved that miracles happen when hearts open to the impossible. "Make a wish," she said, blowing out the candles on the cake prepared by Rose. "What did you wish for?" Helen asked. Lily looked around at her entire chosen family. Will, who found purpose, Audrey, who discovered kinship, Rose and Edward, who gained a daughter, Helen, who recovered a sister, Walter, who found redemption, and even Jessica, who learned about true values. "I wished that all the lost children in the world find families that love them like you all loved me," she said. "And that all horses have people who understand their voices." That night, as Lily fell asleep in the main stable surrounded by the horses that had become her eternal companions, Will reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with snakes attacking his animals and ended with the creation of a family that transcended all conventional definitions. The girl who had appeared as a guardian angel for his horses had revealed herself to be not just a special child, but an ancient soul who had brought healing to everyone fortunate enough to cross her path. Lily had proven that true love can overcome any trauma, that family is defined by choice and not biology, and that sometimes the most extraordinary miracles arrive disguised as tragedies. As the stars shone over the North Carolina hills, a 4-year-old girl with the soul of a 44-year-old slept peacefully, knowing she had finally found her place in the world. Not as the heiress to a fortune, but as the beloved daughter of a family that proved the impossible becomes possible when love is unconditional. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.